In this video, you're gonna learn my top 7 phone sales mistakes people always make all the time when they're trying to sell over the phone. And you wanna make sure you watch this video until the end, because if you don't know what these mistakes are and you make them during your sales meetings, that can cost you the difference between closing a deal and losing it. What's going on, everybody? Patrick here. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and let's go ahead and dive into the 7 phone sales mistakes. Mistake number 1 is when you forget to research your prospects ahead of time. Now, when you're selling over the phone, right, you already have an appointment with somebody, and it's your job to have a conversation with them, build a connection, and eventually understand their problems so you can close a deal, at the end of the call or whatever it is. Now, for a lot of closers and account executives and anyone whose job it is to close deals, sometimes you get a little lazy and you don't research the company, and it can actually end up costing you the deal because you're not really doing your homework ahead of time, meaning it's gonna be more difficult for you to ask more intelligent questions to uncover their pains. Ultimately, that's to close a deal, right? So what I would recommend you do if you are someone who closes deals is number 1 thing you wanna do is go on the company's website. So if you're gonna talk to somebody, you know who they are, you got their email address, you got some information about them, you're gonna want to go to their company website to learn a little bit about what they're doing, what challenges do they have, do they have any new products coming out, what are the initiatives, because you don't have to ask them on the phone, you can literally just go on their website. Number 2 thing you wanna do is go on Google, type in their company name, and see if there's any news going on about that specific company, right? Because sometimes, companies will write blog articles about it, or maybe they are in the news on like Forbes or something like that. So you wanna make sure you know what's going on and you're up to date with the latest happenings for that company. And the 3rd thing you wanna do is you want to go on LinkedIn, and you wanna find the decision maker or decision makers that you are going to be talking to, right? Understand, everybody's name and last name, know what role they are, how long they've been at the company, what is their job, what is their goal, and sometimes you can even look into their background information, which is all on LinkedIn. And you can look at what school they went to, where they're from, any similar hobbies, or even their ethnicity, or even organizations they're a part of, ethnicities, basically whatever works for you. But you want to make sure you go on LinkedIn to make sure you really know who you're talking to, because it does provide a lot of context. So when you are on the phone, you can dive a little deeper, right? Because if you already did your research about the company, you know what their goals are, you know what their pains are, you don't have to ask basic questions on the phone. You can be like, okay, I already know, based on this article that, XYZ is happening, is that true? They'll be like, yeah, that's true. We're trying to grow our business and we just raised funding. Then from there, you kind of start a more deeper conversation. You don't have to waste like 10, 15 minutes just getting the basics, right? So make sure you do your homework. People are impressed when you do your homework, and it's gonna make selling a lot easier. Now, the next phone sales mistake people make all the time is they spend too much time on building rapport. Now, I talk a lot about this in my videos, and building rapport is essentially when you're getting the other person to like you, you're having a conversation, and it's just like getting a person to like you as a human being before you actually start selling, right? But throughout the conversation, you're always building rapport, but when people are starting out, they don't really remember this. And so in the beginning of the call, they start talking about random things, just trying to build a connection, right? And they're not sure when to start a meeting. So for example, someone might have a meeting with a prospect, and they might say something like, oh, where are you from? Oh, what sports do you play? Oh, that's cool. Oh, what's your favorite food? Oh yeah, it's like you just go on and on and on. And the thing with business, or the thing with sales, is that you don't need to talk about all these random things that have nothing to do with what your purpose of why you're there, which is to sell something, right? Or to help them become more educated about a product. So they don't care if you had dinner at this place. They don't care if you play softball, right? Maybe a little bit of that is okay, just to break the ice, but after a minute or two, you want to just dive right into the actual sales meeting. You don't really need to beat around the bush, especially when you're selling into, let's say, Western companies, because it's just not that necessary, right? Don't try to look for like this crazy thing in common where, it's just like, oh my God, you love baseball, I love baseball too. It's just unlikely that's gonna happen unless you're selling into a specific industry where it's about that hobby, right? But if it's just like you're selling software to like a Fortune 500 company, well, just get into it, because I think that's more respectful of a person's time, and they don't really care about talking about random stuff in the beginning. Now, the next mistake people make all the time is they don't set clear expectations at the beginning of the call, right? So there's a building rapport part, you're building connection with somebody, and you're moving to the next part of the sales process. Now, the next step is usually to set the agenda or set the expectations of what's going to happen in the call. A lot of times people forget to do this, so it's kind of like they build rapport, then they just dive right into, okay, so this is what I do, here's my pitch, and blah, 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 blah. In sales, it's a little too quick, too fast, and it just feels like you're talking about yourself if you are just pitching way too early. Instead, what you want to do is you want to take a step back and set the expectations for the call. What do people expect? Why are they there? What do you want to happen? What do they want to happen? What's going to happen at the end of the call? How long is the call going to be? All these questions you need to get answered right in the beginning of the conversation so that people don't wonder when this meeting is going to be over, when you're going to shut up and stop pitching, and what's the whole point of the meeting anyways, right? So it's extremely important that you do set the expectations for the call so both sides understand, both sides are on the same page, and so it's more like two people working together versus you trying to sell them. And it's quite simple actually. So let's say you build rapport, then you want to get started with the meeting and you say something like this. Hey John, do you mind if we go ahead and get started? John says, sure. So you want to say something like this. Well, obviously I reached out, and the reason is because I want to take 15 minutes to learn a little bit more about your business, what you're doing, and if I can help in any way. So obviously I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions to learn more about you, and if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask at any time. Now at the end of the meeting, after we have a little conversation, if we find that, hey, maybe there's a fit for us to work together in some way, great, we can move on to what those next steps would be. But if we find that, hey, it's not really a good fit, totally fine as well. Is that okay with you, John? John will say, sure, right? Sounds good. So as you can see, setting an agenda is very simple, right? I'm there for a reason. I'm here to solve problems. I'm here to ask questions to learn about their business. They can ask me questions. It's gonna be a 15-minute conversation at the end. Either they move to the next step or they don't. Either way, it's cool. So that's pretty much how you want to set the expectations. Obviously, do it in your own style, but you could definitely use my framework to make it a lot easier for yourself. Now, the next mistake people make all the time is they pitch instead of having a conversation, right? So in sales, after you set the expectations, obviously you are going to have a conversation. It's not a pitch, right? So you're not gonna set the expectation and be like, okay, let me pitch my product and service and let me tell you about how great we are and why you should partner with us. It's a little too much right in the beginning. Typically you would do a little pitch in the beginning, but you would really wanna pitch towards the end, right? Because you gotta identify their problems first, right? Because if you don't know someone's problems, how can you effectively pitch to solve those problems, right? Because if you pitch in the beginning, you're not really sure if people even care about your pitch. You need to pitch it specifically for that person. And to do that, you want to be talking 20% of the time, and you want the customer, the prospect, to be talking 80% of the time. Meaning, all you're really doing is you're asking a bunch of questions to understand the prospect. And that's how you have a conversation. It's not like you just pitch and they say yes or no. It's more like, so, what are the challenges that you're experiencing? And then they tell you, oh, that's pretty interesting. Well, how long has that been a problem, right? So it's more of a conversation style. And eventually, all you're really doing is getting the person to talk, getting them to realize their pains, and then you're just positioning yourself in the best possible way so that towards the end of the call, you can be ready to pitch. Which leads us to the next common mistake people make, and that is focusing too much on features. So there's gonna be a point of time when you pitch or the prospect's gonna ask you like, hey, so what exactly do you do? What's your software? What's your consulting? What is it that I'm buying? And when you get to this point, you need to understand that you want to stay away from just the features. So if you're selling like a very technical product, you don't want to be like, oh, we have, we integrate with this and that, and here's our software stack, and here's this, and here's how we do our database. And it's just like too many features, it's just not that great. Or if you're, let's say, I don't know, selling a car, right? You're gonna say, oh, it can go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and the engine is a twin turbine, and we have an XLR 180, and so, I'm just making stuff up, but you know what I mean, right? The features don't really captivate people unless they really care about the features, and most people really don't. So what do they really care about? Well, they care about more of the value that you provide, right? So it's not really the features that sell, it's the value that your product and service brings and why someone will buy it emotionally, right? So if you're selling a car, why do people buy, let's say, sports cars? Okay, so it could be something like, high-end Mercedes, a high-end Audi, or I don't know, a Range Rover, a Lamborghini, these kind of cars. Like, why do people buy these cars versus any other car? And it's not because it necessarily goes faster. It's more of the status that comes with it, right? Or a better example would be like, why do people buy Tesla? Obviously, there's many benefits, right? But I think the main one is that it's cool. Okay, so like for Tesla, it's like electric, so you save the environment. So when you drive it, people are like, oh my God, you don't use gas, okay? Number two, the car actually looks cool, so when you're driving it, people think you're cool. Number three, it's like a statement, right? It's kind of like why people would wear a Rolex, for example, right? It's like a statement, status. It just kind of categorizes you where you are in society and things like that. So emotionally, people are invested into Tesla, right? I'm sure it's a great car, but you know, when people talk about why they want to buy Teslas, or my friends talk about that, it's not about the technical features of it. You know, it's more about what it stands for, what you know, how you are perceived when you are driving it. Same with any other luxury car, right? Range Rover, Audi, BMW, it's the same thing. There's a certain statement that you make about yourself when you're driving this vehicle. So bringing it back to, you know, not car sales related stuff, it's not about the features, it's about the value that you bring, right? Sometimes you're buying status, sometimes you're buying time, sometimes the customer is buying the opportunity to remove a pain in their life, right? So, you know, people don't really care how it's done necessarily. They care about whether it's easy, cost effective, and actually does the job, right? So if you can dive a little deeper into the emotions of why people are buying, it's gonna be a lot more easier for you to sell. So don't just focus on the features and the benefits. And the quick example I just thought about is, you know, when people buy high-end cinema cameras, right? So you could be shooting a video on a low-end camera, or you could spend a few $1,000s on a high-end camera. Well, for the few $1,000 camera, it's not about the specs. It's not about like all these, you know, it's like people don't understand like what all these things are. It's like, you know, the bit rate and the, you know, S-Log and things like that. A lot of people don't understand, but they do understand that they want to become a better filmmaker. So that's why they buy the expensive camera versus the cheaper camera, right? So if you tap into those emotions, that's how you get people to buy. And now we're gonna move into the next mistake people make when they're selling on the phone, and that's when they sell themselves too short. I actually see this a lot with a lot of my students, and you know, they might be offering a pretty good product and service. They might be delivering amazing value for, you know, they deliver on something really great, and the cost is pretty economical. So it's like great value. But you know, when they try to pitch me their product and service, or the, you know, practice pitch, right, or role playing, or they try to explain to me like why it's so good. You know, a lot of times I realize people sell themselves short. They like to downplay the benefit that they have, the value that they bring. And so when they're explaining what they do, it kind of sounds boring, or, you know, not interesting, or there's no reason for why someone would jump at the opportunity to work with them. So instead, what you want to do is you want to understand what value you provide, and you want to make sure that you are not selling yourself short, that you actually communicate the value that you provide. Don't be afraid that, you know, what you're doing is so great that people won't believe you, so you underplay yourself, because if you do that, people won't understand the value that you bring and you just won't sell anything, right? And obviously you don't want to go over the top where you're making empty promises and you can't actually deliver on what you said you would. That would just be lying. So you got to find that balance of not selling yourself short, but, you know, demonstrating and flexing why someone should work with you. And it could be things like you're saving them a lot of time, saving them a lot of money, helping them buy their way into status in a sense with luxury goods, you know? So definitely don't underplay yourself, find your strengths and flex it. And now the next mistake most people make when they are selling on the phone is they're not prepared for the most common sales objections, right? So if you're in sales and you are closing, you know that you're gonna face a lot of objections, right? And the mistake I see a lot of people make is that sometimes when you do sales for a while, maybe it's months, maybe it's years, selling a specific product and service to the same people, you already know what these objections are because you talk to so many people and they probably will say the same thing if you're not fixing the way you pitch. So if you already know someone is likely to give you an objection, you definitely need to be prepared for that, right? Like ahead of time. So you definitely need to write that down, write out what your response is so that when the moment comes, you're just ready to go and they give you the objection. You're like, oh, okay, I totally understand what you're saying. However, objection goes in there, right? Or objection handling goes in there. So don't always try to wing it on the fly. Don't think you're just so great of a salesperson that you don't need to prepare. If you already know these objections are so common, why not prepare? Right? Because it's gonna be so much easier for you to actually go through that meeting, handle the objection, and eventually close the deal. And I know for me, when I started my career in sales, especially when I started working at Oracle, you know, there were a lot of objections that people had when it comes to buying our software. So I literally just wrote them all down, write all the objections that I possibly have, and then after work I would just practice my objection handling. So it would be like, okay, this person gave me this objection, what would I say? And I would come up with the perfect response, right? And basically just practice, 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 and practice. What eventually happens is that in the beginning, you're kind of like doing it word for word because you're just practicing, or you're a beginner. But then over time, it kind of gets embedded in you and you don't really need a script anymore. So when someone gives you the objection, you kind of already know what you're gonna say. You're not saying it word for word like a robot. You just know the answer to it because you know the subject so well, right? So for your sale, whatever you're selling, also write down the common objections because you're definitely gonna experience them. So you definitely need to know what they are and know how to handle it. So that said, those are gonna be the 7 most common phone sales mistakes I see people making all the time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications. And if you wanna take your sales game to the next level, make sure to check out my course, Sales Legacy. That's gonna teach you everything you need to know when it comes to sales. Check the link in the description to check that out. With that said, my name is Patrick Deng, and I'll see you guys in the next one.